Shalom Aleichem, everybody. We're up to Mirz Hashem really Daf Test today, but we are all the way up on Daf Chesem at Beis by the two dots, where the Mishnah said, where the Mishnah mentioned the holidays, the Elu Eidein Shel Avdei Kachavim, right? Going in the halacha, you're not allowed to do business 3 days before the holidays. The Mishnah mentioned a couple of Roman holidays, which is one of them is called, what is it called? It's called Kratisim. So what is my Kratisim? What is the holiday of Kratisim? Amar Rav Yudah Mishmuel, Rab Shaul, Gevalt. Amar Rav Mishmuel, Yom Shetafsu Boi Roimi Malchus. The day that Rome, it's Independence Day for Rome. They were Tafsa Malchus. They took the Malchus over from, who did Rome get it from? Yom Shetafsu Boi Roimi Malchus. They took it from Yovan, the Greeks. Tanya asks the Gemara, really, Kratisim, Yom Shetafsu Boi Malchus, it says in the Brisa, two different holidays. One is Kratisim, and one is Yom Shetafsu Boi Roimi Malchus. So obviously it can't be that that's Kratisim, two different holidays. Amar Rav Yosef, Shtei Tfisis Tafsir Rami. They were in 2 stages. They did it. Number 1, Achaz b'mei Cleopatra, right? Cleopatra Malkasa. In the days of Cleopatra, the queen, right? She was the queen of Alexandria, Biras Mitzrayim, and at that point they're able to conquer Cleopatra's kingdom, and then afterwards, and then afterwards they went out to war against the Greeks, and that's when they were able to rule the entire world. So you have these 2 stages are 2 holidays in their evolvement as a nation, as a power, as a world power. The Rav Dimi came for Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. He said, "Tlosun utrein krave of the Remoy Bad Yevanoi." They had 32 battles against the Greeks. The Romans fought 32 battles against the Greeks, and they couldn't conquer them. They couldn't beat them until they partnered with Israel. Look at this. Yeah, the Western world is partnering with Israel. And then, but this is what they made a condition. If we're going to win, if we're going to have kings, whatever kings we're going to have as a result of the win, then you're going to be Moshlim. You're going to be governors. And if you're going to be the kings, then we're going to be the Moshlim. We're going to have the governors. And they sent to the Yevanim. The Romans, after making this deal with Israel, they sent to the Yevanim, they said, until now, we were battling against you, right? We dealt on the battlefield. But now let's go to court. Yeah, let's deal with you legally. Margolius logically. Yeah, Margolius ve'evan toivel. If you have a Margolius, an evan toivel, what's a Margolius? A diamond and a precious stone. Which one is going to become the basis or like the frame for its friend? In other words, which one is more chashuv? The Yevanim, the Greeks answered, what do you mean? Margolius, le'evan toiva. The evan toiva, the precious stone, is more valuable than the Margolius, and therefore the Margolius serves the evan toiva. So the Gemara says, the Ramoim asked another question to the Yevanim. Evan toiva ve'inach. What about if you have a precious stone ve'einach? What is einach? Einach is carbuncle or onyx. Not sure, but it's a gem, okay? It's a precious stone and a gem. So they said,
נופך, השם שלה נופך.
נופך?
זה אבן יקרה, אבן יקרה.
Okay.
מרגלית יקרה מאוד.
Which one should become a base, right? The framework for its friend. Evan toivel einach. Avada, the precious stone for the einach is more precious. What about einach the Sefer Torah? What about einach in the Sefer Torah? Izim yasbas l'chaveroi. Stevanim interestingly said einach the Sefer Torah. I guess they realized the value of a Sefer Torah. What they said? Well, they definitely valued wisdom. They definitely valued wisdom, the Yevanim. And in fact, they were afraid of the power of mitzvahs, right? That's why they asked Yidden to keep Shchayda Shabbos and Mila. So they knew the power. And they said, Einach l'Sefer Torah. The Einach should serve as the basis, I guess, as the bima to a Sefer Torah. Oh, so good to see you. Sholchaluhu So they said, Im Kain, if it's true that the Enoch should serve the Sefer Torah, a non-Sefer Torah Gabon. We have a Sefer Torah with us. Who's the Sefer Torah that we have with us? We have a special superpower. The Yisrael Ba'adam. We have Israel on our side. That's what the Romans told the Greeks. We have Israel on our side. Kafaluhu, Esrin v'shiz shnin, kamalu b'nesai. Basically, they went to war afterwards, and they beat the Greeks, and they overtook the world. Esrin v'shiz shnin, kamalu b'nesai b'ad Yisrael. They kept their deal for 26 years. Mikan ve'elach ishtabdebuhu. After 26 years, right, they were loyal and true to their agreement, and afterwards, ishtabdebuhu, they turned on us. They reneged. Right? So what's the pshat? Ishtabdebu after 26 years. Why? Mikara my darish, l'basayf my darish. When they treated Klal Yisrael as equals, why did they do that? And what made them change their mind? It says Gemara, Mikara darish. It says when Esav said to Yaakov after they hugged it out, it says Nisa v'neilecha ve'elcha v'negdecha. Right? Esav is Rome, Yaakov is Eretz Yisrael. Is Israel, right? This is Klal Yisrael. So he says, let's be equal. Nisa v'neilecha ve'elcha v'negdecha. Al-negdecha means I'll walk with you. Esav said to Yaakov, right? But Yaakov rejected it. L'sayv darish, Yavar no adoin l'fnei avda. Yaakov answered to Esav, no, you go in front of me, which means that Esav is going to be the manig and Klal Yisrael is going to follow the leader, which is Esav, Rome. So in the beginning, 26 years, they focused on that pasuk of Esav telling Yaakov we're equals. And that's why they honored their agreement. After 26 years, they focused on the other pasuk of Yavar no adoini l'fnei avda. Yaakov himself said to Esav, you walk in front. And Memela, that was their turning point.
There's a famous story that comes with Shirah based on this pasuk.
Okay, please, go ahead.
He was in a subway. He was there were a bunch of young hoodlums.
Okay.
That he had in his pocket a lot of money collected at yeshiva. And those hoodlums, he saw they were no goodniks.
Okay.
So they were gathering. He says, "Where are you going?" He says, "Oh, I'm going to such and such location," which was a few stops ahead. So he got the location, and he was nice to them. He acted like he was going to go off. And he pointed them, "Please go ahead of me," and he let them all go out. Went back to the subway. They went, and he stayed at the subway. He based it on this pasuk.
Oh, Yavar no adoini l'fnei
Yes.
avdai. Let them go first. Let them go first.
So
Wow.
they're based on
Okay,
this pasuk.
beautiful. Okay, so Alts in the Torah, every interaction with hoodlums. Okay, is all in the Torah. So now Gemara asks, okay, so you know that the Romans had a turning point at some point in history. They turned on us and they didn't honor the agreement, and they got it from the pasuk of Yaakov saying to Esav, "You go first." Ask the Gemara, but Esem v'shishni the kamba v'nasai b'ad Yisrael menovan. How do I know that it lasted 26 years? What's the cheshbon? The Omer of Kahana says the Gemara, K'shechol Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi got sick. Sholchulei the Chachamim center. Shmuel Bar Yosi Rebbe. And Moilon Shnayim Shlesh Dvar Shamartalam Shemavicha. Quote your father. Give us 2-3 chedushim. Hashem your father Rabbi Yosi. Ambalahu said like this: Meya u'shmoinim shana koydem shenecher abayis. 180 years before Bayis Sheni was destroyed. Pashto Malchus Shah al Yisrael, which means that Rome came into power, they became a superpower, a world power, 180 years before Bayis Sheni was destroyed. Shemoinim Shana, Ad Lecharva Bayis, Gazru Tumal Eretz Amim. 80 years before the Churban Bayis Sheni, Chachamim said that anybody who walks into Chutz La'aretz is Tamei. Why? Because they didn't know where the Kfarim were, they weren't keeping track of Kfarim. So 80 years at that point, that's why they were Geyser on all of Chutz La'aretz, should be a Safek Kever. And anybody who comes into Eretz Yisrael should make sure, even over there, make sure that he treats himself as Thomas Mace. V'al klei zechuches arboim shona ad lechar abayis. And klei zechuches, right? The Torah didn't include klei zechuches as one of the kelim that are makablam tuma. But the Chachamim were geyser even on klei zechuches on glass and crystal that should also be makablam tuma. We'll see the time for the gzeira is over there in the Gemara and Shabbos, but al kapanim that was 40 years before the Churban. And Gemara says, that was also 80 years. Arbam Shana, Ad L'Charvais, goes to Sanhedrin, V'yashla B'chanos. 40 years before the Churban, that's where Sanhedrin got off on the Lishkas HaGazes, the place where they used to sit in the Beis HaMikdash, and they went to a place on the Harabayas outside of the Mikdash, which is called Chanos, to Darshan, to Paskin from there. Gemara says, Lamai Hilchasa. What's relevant? This that Rabbi Yossi is teaching us that the Sanhedrin, changed locations. What's irrelevant? I understand why he taught us Tumah be'eretz ha'amim. That's relevant. That we have to be noyeg b'tumah. Also Klei Zchuchas. That Klei Zchuchas is also makabel to Gzeir Derabanan. But who cares? Right now, it's already past that time. So why do we care that the Chachamim, that the Sanhedrin changed locations from the Lishkat HaGazis to Chanus? No, something very significant happened. Once they uprooted their location and they stopped paskening shaylas in Lishkas HaGazis, they lost the power. They lost their power to paskin dinei knossos. What are dinei knossos? An example of dinei knossos is kefil, right? Chamishim shekel, einesim afata. All the dinei knossos. Dinei knossos are the set amounts the Torah gives in different cases. A person kills an eved, right? Or he has to free the eved, or tashlu kefil al gneva. Okay, all this is knossos. And once Bezdin, once Sanhedrin uprooted their location from Lishkas HaGazis and went to Chanus, they couldn't paskin knossos anymore. Dinei knossos al kadaitich asks the Gemara, is that really true? Dinei knossos, they couldn't paskin after Sanhedrin left the Lishkas HaGazis. V'amar Rav Yehuda Barav, Baram, zocher oisa ish l'toiv, that this person should be remembered forever and ever for the good. For Rabbi Yehuda B'Bava Shemai, Rabbi Yehuda B'Bava is his name. She'lemolehu, if not for him, nishtachu dinei knossos l'Yisrael. Dinei knossos would have been forgotten. Dinei knossos would have been forgotten from Klal Yisrael. Gemara says nishtachu. Why would have been forgotten? Ligrasinu chesam advezi Yisrael. It's 3 lines of the widest lines. Nishtachu asks the Gemara ligrasinu. Right? We could learn it. What do you mean? Why would have been a shtakach? We're crediting one person that if not for him, the whole dinei knossos, all the halachas that pertains to knas would have been forgotten. Like we would have learned it. Elo batlu dinei knossos miYisrael. It would have been his battle. In other words, nobody would have been done. He wouldn't have executed dinei knossos because there wouldn't have been smicha. Let's see what happened.
So he made more smicha.
Unbelievable story. Shegozru malchus Shah. Rome made a gzeira. Kol hasoymech yahareg. Any rabbi who gives smicha to a Talmud is going to get killed, executed. They didn't want Torah to be passed on to the next generation in a meaningful way with smicha. V'chol hanismach yahareg. Also the Talmud. The person who receives smicha is also going to get killed. So the rabbi who gives the smicha and the person who receives the smicha is going to get killed. The ir shesoymcha ba, and the city that the smicha was given in, Techarev, is going to be destroyed. In other words, they put real serious fear into the Chachamim not to give smicha. Utchum shesoymcha ba, even anybody who lives in the tchum, within 2,000 amas of the city, Akar is going to be uprooted. So Ma Aser Rabbi Bava. Rabbi Bava was worried about the future of Am Yisrael. So what did he do? He sat between 2 mountains. In between 2 cities. Between 2,000 amas of each city. So make sure he's not within the tchum, he's not within the city. And he is somewhere out in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, as I like to say, but not really there because that's a city, but somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, really. And Bein Usha l'Shfaram, that was the location, between Usha and Shfaram. V'samach sham chamisha zekenim. And he was soymech 5 zekenim, 5 elders. Who was he soymech? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. 6 lines in the bottom, Rabbi Tzvi, from Chesam Beis. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Loza ben Shamua. He was soymech, right? In other words, this was Shas Hashmad, and we know the Shas Hashmad, right? The time that they tried to lead us off Torah mitzvahs, they tried to force us not to keep Torah mitzvahs. Even a mitzvah kali, you have to be Moser Nefesh on. So Rabbi Yehuda Bava was Moser Nefesh to give smicha to these 5 zekenim. One was Rabbi Meir, the Heilige Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Loza ben Shamua, Rabbi Avia Mosef. Rabbi Avia says there was another Tana there too. Afrab Nechemia. Kivan shehikir bem oivim. The Romans got wind of what was going on. They made a gzeira that you shouldn't give smicha, and anybody gives smicha is going to get killed. And they caught wind that Rabbi Yehuda Bava gave smicha to Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shemua, and Rabbi Nechemia, according to some. Amar lehem, so Rabbi Yehuda Bava, he saw the Romans coming with their spears, with their weapons, and they're all running towards them, right? So Rabbi Yehuda Bava says, Banai, Rutsu, run! Amar le Rabbi, what's going to be with you? We don't want to leave you behind. Because he was very old. He couldn't run together with them. The Romans were coming. It says, Hareini muta lefneim. I'm going to die al kiddush Hashem. I can't run with you, but you guys go because I gave you smicha, and you can continue Torah for Am Yisrael. So it says, Hareini muta lefneim ke'evan she'ein lo hifchen. They can do whatever they want to my body. I'm not going to feel it. Amru, they said, Lezozu Misham, the army, the Roman army, didn't move from that place Ad shenotzu lagufa shloish meis lenechoyes shel barzel, until they shot him with 300 arrows of barzel. Vasu lagufa kakvara, his whole body was like a sifter, a sieve, that it was just full of holes, and that's how he died. And by the way, Rabbi Bava is what we mentioned his story on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'av, both days. He's one of the Asar Rugei Malchus, and one of the greats who the Gemara says, if not for him, Nishtakhu dine knas Yisrael doesn't mean Nishtakhu would have been forgotten. We could have learned about it, but it was Nizbatlu. It would have been Nizbatel. It would have completely Nizbatel if not for Yudim Abava. And it's him we have to thank for the fact that even the Churban, after the Churban, right, during the Roman reign, when they were a world power, that we still were able to continue to be Dan Dine Knosses. That's thanks to Yudim Abava. And Gemara says, but what do you see from here? You see that Dine Knosses weren't Nizbatel. Didn't stop 40 years before the Churban, like we just said. Gemara said 40 years before the Churban, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shmuel said from his father that Dine Knossos stopped. They didn't do Dine Knossos anymore 40 years before the Churban. But Yudim Abba was way after the 40 years before the Churban. And still you see that it wasn't his battle because he was Soimech, he gave Smicha to the five greatest Tanoim of his time to continue Paskin and Dine Knossos. Omer of Nachman Yitzchak, it's true. Lo Teba Dine Knossos, you're right. You have to change the word Dine Knossos. It's not what he said. Elo Shaloidonu Dine Nefashis. Really what they stopped, Sanhedrin stopped donning 40 years before the Churban already. They stopped executing murderers. Even al pi halacha, they don't want to take eidos. They stopped doing that. My timer. Why? Even the chazu, the official rights, because Sanhedrin saw that there are a lot of killers, a lot of murderers at that time, and they're not going to be able to judge them all, to really impose din Torah, because the society was corrupt at that point. And if Sanhedrin would have done it, the government that was really under Roman rule at the time, it was a Jewish government, but it was under Hordus, it was under Roman rule, and they just couldn't execute it in the same way that they used to beforehand. So 40 years before the Churban Amru, they said, Mutav nigli mimakam l'makam. It's better that we uproot ourselves from the Lishkas Hagazis in the Beis Hamikdash and go to a place called Chanus in the Har HaBayis, because then it's almost like a loophole. Because the halacha is that Sanhedrin is not allowed to pass Dine Nefashis if they're outside of the Lishkas Hagazis. The Chsiv, V'asizu al pi hadavar, asher yagidu lecha min ha'makayim hahu. The only place Sanhedrin is allowed to pass Dine Nefashis is if they're in the place of Lishkas Hagazis. Once they leave the Beis Hamikdash, the area of the Beis Hamikdash, then they can't be oisik Dine Nefashis. So what did Sanhedrin do? They removed themselves from the Lishkas Hagazis. This way they won't be able to pass Dine Nefashis. Why did they do that? To be able to make sure to say that they had a bunch of stops. I don't remember the whole. Yeah.
Gemara in
Rishon, the what?
The 10 steps they had.
The 10 stops they had.
Yeah.
The Sanhedrin.
Yes, Sanhedrin.
Oh, amazing. So here we go. Talmidei Chacham sitting at our table. So proud. Moshe, we miss you. The Gemara says, Malamed sha'amakam gairim. Teaches us that the makam is gairim. Yeah? That means that Taisa says already, it means that the makam is gairim. Why is the makam gairim? Because the Shechina, right? The Shechina is in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Lishkas Hagazis. To have the Siyata D'Shmai for Sanhedrin to come to a clear psak, right? That somebody's chayiv misa to execute somebody, Dine Nefashis, you have to come to Sanhedrin on the much was in the Lishkas Hagazis. Right?
Half in Kodesh, half in Kochol, because they had to sit.
Oh.
There was no sitting.
That was also part of it. We learned it in Masechet Sanhedrin. I don't remember, unfortunately, everything, but yeah. But Tosfos says Hagam they stayed. It's amazing. Hagam they stayed on the Har HaBayis, even though they didn't leave the Har HaBayis, right? They still stayed on Temple Mount, but they left the Beis Hamikdash itself. And it seems, unsurprisingly, that the Shechina was more present in the Beis Hamikdash itself, even though they still remained in Har HaBayis, and the Mokim is Goyrim, Asher Yivcher, the Mokim Asher Yivcher is Goyrim for the Sanhedrin to be able to be done Dine Nefashis. Okay, says the Gemara Vaiter. Now we just said that the Romans started ruling 180 years before Churban Bayis Sheni. Asks the Gemara, Meya Shmoinim Vesulai? Is it only 180 years that the Romans started ruling before the Churban and not more? V'atani Rabbi Yossi beRebbi. Malchus Paras. The Persians, Bifnei Habayis, Shloishim Va'arba Shana. Right? How much of the Persian reign, Achashverosh, right? He was Persia, he was in the 70 years of Shnois Bavel, right? So that was the beginning of the Persian reign. How many years did Persia rule the world, right? There were 4 Goliaths, 4 kingdoms in the Nevuah of Daniel, right? One of them was Persia. Persia ruled. How many years were they in power during Bayis Sheni? So they were in power the first 34 years of Bayis Sheni. Bayis Sheni stood for 420 years. So the first 34 years, that's when they were in power. Afterwards, Malchus Yavan b'fnei Abayis, Me'esh Shmoinim Shana. The Greeks took over after 34 years into the second Beis Hamikdash, and they ruled through the right Malchus Yavan Me'esh Shmoinim Shana, 180 years. Until when? Until the story of Hanukkah. Till the story of Hanukkah, and then who took over? Who beat the Greeks? The Chashmonoim. And then Malchus Chashmonoi b'fnei Abayis. The Chashmonoim ruled at the time of Bayis Sheni, Me'eh v'sholosh, 103 years. And then who beat the Chashmonoim, right? The Gemara Bava Basra we learned there's no descendant of Chashmonoim alive. Nobody's alive today from the Chashmonoim. Huh? Herod. Malchus Beis Hordus, Me'eh v'sholosh is 103. Mikan ve'elech, and if you want to count the dates of Shtorei Choiv or anything like that, you have to count it from the Churban Abayis. So it's Seva Chashoiv, so wherever you are in the world, at whatever time you live, make sure we're letting you know exactly the cheshboinus of Bayis Sheni, so you can calculate your years since the Churban. There's an Inyan to do it since the Churban Abayis. So the Gemara says, but what do you see from here? Alma, Mosan v'shisav. If you do the math, and Shalom's going to help me out over here, if you do the math, how many years did the Roman government rule for?
206.
It says 206. Why? Yeah, where do you see that from?
103. Chashmonai.
It says
Herod 206.
Malchus Yavan is Me'eh Shmoinim, and Malchus Chashmonai, because Chashmonaim and Hordus were under the Roman rule.
Yeah.
So it's 206. Okay. That Amrit Me'eh Shmoinim Ava, and you say, I guess the last two Chashmonaim and Hordus, right? We have to say that really was under the Roman.
Maybe minus the 34 years of the Paras.
No, Paras was in the beginning. All the way in the beginning, the first 34 years of Bayis Sheni, that was still Paras.
You say about 180.
180 was Yavan, Greek. And then, so you have 34 for Persia, 180 for Greek, and then 206 between the Chashmonaim and Herodus was 206. When it says, you say it's 180, it's not 180, we see it's 206. Elo Esrin V'Shis Shnin Kamu B'Hamanasayu Ba'ad Yisrael L'Shtadabu. That's right, they had that loyalty, that agreement, so that stood for 26 years. So 26, right, it's 206 minus 26, that's 180. So the Gemara says, that's why it's not included in the cheshbon of Reb Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. K'shepashto Malchus Ersha Yisrael Al Yisrael, that's the 180 that he's talking about. The 180 years is K'shepashto Malchus Ersha Al Yisrael. Amar Rav Papa. So Papa says, Itoi Haitana. If the Tana is going to make a mistake, right, and he wants to be choyshev, he wants to calculate for the minion of Churban Abayis, and he's not exactly sure how many years he's standing since the Churban Abayis, right? It's very interesting because I'm very proud of this film. I'm just releasing now in 2 weeks, Mi'at Hashem, about the Rome and the Golus Roimi and how they conquered Eretz Yisrael, destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, brought the Menorah and the Kalim. Rome feels it's a very personal loss. Tisha B'Av is a very personal loss for the Roman Jewish community. It's the longest, oldest surviving Jewish community in the world. So they feel it very acutely. And I had to interview the chief rabbi of Rome. Their minig, by the way, in Rome is every time Tisha B'Av comes, the first words before Eicha is they actually count how many years. They announce it. It's been so many and so many years since the Churban Abayis. They actually count it. Our Papa says, if the time
they've been there since then, that's their
since then. The people there today, community today, are descendants of the families who originally came to Rome with Titus and Russia, and some of them are even there from earlier times, from the times actually of you wouldn't believe this, because the Gemara just said that they partnered with Am Yisrael, right, with Klal Yisrael, to beat the Greeks. So there are actually families, and I've met descendants of those families there, who have come to Rome 200 years before the Churban, 2,200 years ago. And that was by the time of of the Hanukkah story, where we finally beat the Greeks, and that's where we partnered with Rome.
Sephardic, Ashkenazi,
So there are some mixes because a lot of Jews came during the Spanish Inquisition to Rome in the 1500s. So they're the new. They call them the newcomers. They've been there for 500 years. They're the newcomers. But a lot of the families and my sons came with me to Rome, and we filmed there, and they saw and they met some of these people. It's incredible, and they are literally descendants from people who came with Titus of Russia and before. So the Gemara says, now we cheshbon from the Churban Abayis. So itoy haytana. If a Tana makes a mistake and he's not sure how to cheshbon from the Churban Abayis, he's not sure where he's standing. So he's not going to make a mistake with the millennia or the century. He's going to make a mistake with the tens and the ones, right? Like what we're standing right now. Let's say Mebriya Sa'olam, 57, right? What is it? 89. Tavshin Peites.
85.
85. Oh gosh, see, I just made a mistake. This is Mavish. Hey, use me as an example, right? I didn't make a mistake in the 57, not in the. I made a mistake in the tens and the ones. So that's how usually you make a mistake. So Rav Papa wants to give some assistance to a Tana that might make a mistake. How many years we have since the Churban Abayis? How can you check yourself and get back on track? He says, Itay Tana v'liyoda prati kamahava. The prati means the single digits, right? Not the triple digits, the single and double digits. What is it? L'shayla l'safar kamakasev. You should ask a sofer what the year he's writing in his shtaris. V'nitfa alayu esr shnen, and add 20 years. Umashkech le'lechomrei, and you'll find your solution. V'simanich zeli esr mishana beveisecha. And there's a pasuk, where Yaakov said to Lavan, I'm already here 20 years working for you. But Al Kapanim, Rav Papa is saying, just check the secular calendar that the Soifrim have to write Shtari Chayiv, and every time they write Shtari Chayiv, they have to write in the date of the Malchus Yavan, right? The secular calendar in the times of the Gemara is referring to as Malchus Yavan, the Greek calendar from the time Yavan came into power. And if you take those numbers and you add 20, you will come back to the amount, to the exact number of Churban Abayis, how many years you are standing in since the Churban Abayis. Gemara says, and the opposite is also true. Toya Safra, let's say somebody writes Shtaris.
Why 20?
Okay, so Rashi, you want to get into the Cheshbon?
26,
Huh? No, so 26 is Rome. Rome is the agreement Rome kept with the Jews once they overpowered the Greeks. But there's a reason why 20, and Rashi explains it. We can read, you know what, let's read Rashi quickly, Taka. Why Taka 20? So Rashi says, first wide line in Rashi. Sh'ha'minyan ha'sofer maschel.
רום היה ביטו באמרס. לנו לא היה.
Was that Phil? Was it?
To Rome, they had B2 bombers. We didn't have one.
The Rome had B-2 bombers.
We didn't have one. That's why they.
You're saying modern day Rome, Western civilization today. Yeah, that's okay. You know what? It's Rome. We're still in Golas Edom. This is right.
Mamash.
Okay.
We're even the red one, the redhead over there.
Everybody's passing around. You saw what's going around the Tosfos and the Beis and Beis and Avodah Zarah. We learned it a couple of days ago, where the Gemara says that Rome is going to be first, and argue.
Other people, they're circulating.
Yeah, everybody's circulating this Tosfos, and we actually mentioned it when we learned that Tosfos says that right before Mashiach comes, Rome is going to conquer Persia, because Persia and Rome are going to be
B2.
B2, Beis and Excellent.
BB.
Is this considered conquered? Conquered? I don't know.
Okay, so what's Tosfos' lashon? Is it conquered? Maybe I'm misquoting. Tosfos says Shetipa. It's gonna fall. Paras is gonna fall. Biyad Roimi. Somach lebias Hamashiach. Tosfos Mamish predicted, and it was like that day on the daf, on that Tosfos. I think that was the day, or it was like a day after. I'm not sure. That's when they sent the B-2 bombers to bomb. Okay, whatever. Shine, ganz the Sachen. But I'll upon him. It's falling. It's falling. Yeah.
Put in his head.
Okay. Anyway, you want to know why 20, right? So we can just quickly take a look at Rashi. Why 20? So Rashi says, "Minyan hasofer, any sofer, any scribe." I'm reading from the very first wide line in Rashi, the widest line in Rashi. Rashi explains why 20. Why add 20 to get to Minyan Churban Abayis? So Rashi says, "Minyan hasofer, the sofer, the scribe that writes shtaris, maschil." He starts, right, his calendar, his date always starts Shin Pei Shanam Kodem HaChurban. He starts 380 years before the Churban. Why 380 years before the Churban? Because the Tanya Le'il, the Yovan Notlu Malchus, L'Soif Lamed Dal Bin Abayis. When did Greece come into power? They came into power 34 years into Bayis Sheni. And they didn't really fully come into power until 6 years later, which is 40 years into Bayis Sheni. How long did Bayis Sheni stand for? 420. So 40 minus 420 is 380. So every cipher that starts from Malchus Yovan is going to have is going to have 380 years more than the Churban Abayis, because they came 380 years before the Churban into power.
They're gonna have 40 years less.
From the 420, which is 380. So in other words, if I start counting from the Churban Abayis and the Sefer starts counting from when Greek came into power, what's the gap? 380. The difference is 380. Now, how do we get to 20? So Rashi explains. Rashi says, so now, Nimtza, so 20 years after the Churban, now we are 400 years apart. So from there and on, so now you have to add 20 every time to get to the proper number of Churban Abayis. Okay, I'm not exactly sure that last part. We can go to Shalom after this year. And
it's note 11.
go ahead, what do you read it? What does it say?
It says, the count used by scribes began 380 years before the destruction. Therefore, subtracting 380 from the scribe's date yields the number of the year of the post-destruction era. The Tana, however, needs to know only the last two digits of the post-destruction year. So he could ignore the first two digits of the scribe's date and just subtract 80 from its last two digits.
Subtract
Or
80
add
or
20.
add 20?
Same thing.
Okay. I'm going to pretend I understood that clearly, but I know you did. No, that's okay. So the Gemara says, Ito is for the same old's true. But basically, I like to know. I don't have to know how the equation works. The Rav Papa is giving you a remez and how to do it. Understanding how it works out, okay, that you can look at the notes and the Rashi. But Ito is same old's true the other way around. If the Sefer makes a mistake, he's not sure exactly how many years passed since Greek came into power, right? What's the two last digits? You can ask a Jew, a Tana, how many years is since the Churban Abayis, and then take that number, and deduct 20 years, and you'll find your solution, you'll find the proper count. A Sefer deducts, and a Tana adds. Tana de Be'eliyahu, says the Gemara, Tana de Be'eliyahu, the Besmedrash of Eliyahu, Eliyahu Navi. Wow. How many Gemaras do you have? Tana de Be'eliyahu. The Gemara brings down Tana de Be'eliyahu. It's amazing. Sheish is love Yesh Sefer, that's right. Yeah. There are 6,000 years that the world is going to exist. Shnei alafim, the first 2,000 is toyu, is empty. Why? Because there was no Torah. Shnei alafim, Torah. The second 2,000, the second set of 2,000 is going to be Torah. Shnei alafim, the last 2,000, Yomais HaMashiach, is going to be Yomais HaMashiach. But Leonov says, Bavanisenu shirabu, since our Averis are so great, Yatsu mehen, Mashi Yatsu mehen. The person could say, hey, so already past 4,000 years, L'Brias HaOlam, the last 2,000 years, Mashiach. That means Mashiach could already come from 4,000 and on, and he still's not here, and we're already in 5,700 and something. So, Bavanisenu shirabu, Yatsu mehen, Mashi Yatsu. Says the Gemara, Shnei alafim Torah me'emas. Asks the Gemara, is it true that the Torah was given 2,000 years L'Brias HaOlam? Because we just said Shnei alafim Torah and then Shnei alafim Torah, which means, according to that calculation, Torah must have been given in the year 2000, L'Brias HaOlam. But is that really true? Gemara says, if you're going to count from Matan Torah, ad hashta lekekulahai. There isn't, right? Until the Soif Elef Revi, I guess from when the Gemara is written, there's not 2,000 years that have gone by since Matan Torah. So how can you tell me that the 2,000, the second set of 2,000 is Torah? Gemara says, because if you count it, you'll see that you haven't even reached. Because Matan Torah was given in what year? 2,448. Right? 2448, that's when the Torah was given.
We count from Abraham Avinu, that's what we count.
Oh, says the Gemara, Elo mevasa nefesh asa b'charan. When is it considered the Torah was given into the world? The Torah was brought into the world. It was from Avraham Avinu teaching everybody the values of Torah. The Gemiri, and we have a Kabbalah, we have a Messiah, the Avram Ba'ishaita Bar Chamshin V'tar Te'ava. He was 52 years old. So now, which means like this.
And it was exactly 2000 because he was born 1948, the Briat HaOlam.
Okay.
And he was 52, it's exactly 2000 years.
So 1 second. When was Avram Avinu born?
1948.
1948.
לבריאת העולם.
Lebriat Olam. Yeah, 1948. And so when did he start teaching Torah?
Israel became a state in 1940.
That's right. Isn't that something?
אברהם
Yeah.
עובד ציון, yeah?
May 14. May.
Huh?
He fought the four kings. You could
אברהם
remember
עובד
that?
ציון.
Which one?
He fought the four kings in the year.
Yeah, something. Yeah, go ahead.
No. You said something. Remember they fought the four kings in the same year that Israel fought.
I don't remember what I said. Oh
You
my.
said something good.
Yeah,
I
yeah?
remember, I
Okay.
remember. It was good.
My son remembers I said something good. That's good.
What? Four armies?
The 4 kings against the 5. You're talking
Four
about?
armies?
It was the same date that Israel started fighting. The same date that Avram also started
I
fighting.
started finding the voice. Ma'aseh Avasim and Labanim. That everything Avram Avinu did, whatever
No, it
else
was the same
did.
exact date as the
Same
date.
exact date. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1948 plus 52, you have 2,000. So Kamba Batzer and Meditani Tana. So how much do we have left? Arba ma'ov arbonat ma'yishnin havian. So we have 448. Kema'ayin boy ma'nefesh as b'chor man Torah. Arba ma'ov arbonat ma'yishnin havian. So if you count from a nefesh also b'chor until Matan Torah, you have 448 years. Anyway, bottom line is, if you count from 52 years old, till the end of Elif Arvi, you have 2,000 years of Torah. So the world stands for 6,000 years. Very interesting.
215 left.
We have 215 left. I'm sure you saw this clip that going around with the 215. Reb Shol sent it to me. You know the whole cheshbon. Okay, it's not. You saw that where the 28 times Shlomo Melech mentions the Kehelis, Ace.
Yeah.
Ace.
עת למלחמה ועת לשלום. עכשיו אנחנו בעת לשלום.
So he says if you take 6,000 and you divide it by 28, right? So in other words, these are all the eaten throughout the world. You'll come out with around 214 change for each ace. Exactly 214.2.
214.2-ish.
So,
Also right there.
so if you do the math, it's amazing.
Subtract 6,000 to 14.2. What you left?
When
No, you get exactly to the date. Yud-Zayin, Sivan.
so Ace Milchama, the 214 of Ace Milchama was the First World War, the Second World War, October 7th. We just started
3 days before
the
they started.
214
It's the
because
last
215 left, last one. It's Ace Shalom. The last 214. We just started. We just entered this phase.
Yud-Zayin, Sivan.
Which one?
Yud-Zayin, Sivan.
Yud Zayin Sivan, which was the day that
Israel
was-
started attacking
Israel started attacking. On that day that ace started. That's an incredible cheshbon, huh?
Vilna Gaon.
That's it. Ace Shalom.
Vilna Gaon, yeah.
They just said now in the Yeshiva News about the Sefer written 500 years ago by Shmuel. You see it?
No,
No.
זה Vilna Gaon, זה Vilna
Something he
Gaon.
wrote, and he said that the final battle of Gog and Magog was supposed to be at the Strait of Hormuz.
No way.
It's on Yeshiva.
Whoa.
Just now, I learned.
That's
It was
incredible.
500 years ago, and some rabbi just.
That's absolutely amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
לא, וילנה גאון
The
אמר.
Strait, they didn't have the war
Yeah.
yet.
וילנה גאון אמר, אם תראה, נו, עוד שמע, איזה אומה שיוצאת מהורמוז, איזה אומה, אז תדע שהמשיח מגיע. וילנה גאון.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Rav Moshe Chaim Schneider, a close Talmud of a tzaddik Rav Kook, went to someone today on Sunday and showed him a copy from the ancient Sefer Kli Paz, written by the Mekubal of Shmuel Laniado, who lived 500 years ago, known as a Bala Kalim, after his Sefarim Kli Paz, Kli Chemda, and Kli Yakar. I'll skip a little bit, and he says the passage presented by Rav Kook aroused tremendous excitement as it remarkably predicts events currently splash across international headlines. On the commentary, Ki Zevach L'Hashem B'Ftzara.
לבוצרה.
For Hashem,
Bevotzra.
Bevotzra, Hashem as a sacrifice in Botzra. And he writes, there's a country far from Babel whose name is Botzra, and it is between the border of Assyria and Persia, and between the border of the land of Edom, Hormuz, and it is today under the rule of Ishmaelim, and who knows the truth of these things? Perhaps the war will be there at the end of days.
Wow. It's 500 years ago. Prediction. Okay, let's see what happens.
He has a statement here, and he quotes it.
Incredible.
So.
Incredible stuff. What's happening? We're living through Mamish history. I want to mention just one Bnei Saschar, one of my favorite Bnei Saschars. Bnei Saschar says that it says in Iyov, in Perik Lamed Vav, Pasuk Lamed Vav, it says Va'alefcha Chachma. I will teach you wisdom. Bnei Saschar says the word Va'alefcha is split Vav, Alephs. There's 6 Alephs,
Vav alafim.
and in the Torah you have 6 parashas that begin with the letter Aleph. Yeah, which ones are they? Eile toldot Noach. Yeah.
Eile Shmot.
Eile, no, that's ve'eile. Eile pekudei hamishkan. Im b'chukotai atalechu. Eile masei b'nei Yisrael. Eile hadvarim. That's ve'eile. And Eile atem nitzavim. So he says those 6 aleph teach you the entire world. Every aleph, every 1,000. Eile told us Noach means Eile told us these are the children. Means the first 1,000 years of the world was just there to populate, to have children. The second one was Eile Pekudei. These are the important ones. Who came along in the from Avinu, Yitzchak, Yaakov, right? All of them, Moshe Rabbeinu. And what happened in the third? Right, in the third aleph, the third Elef Ashlishi, what happened 24:48 we just said is Im b'chokazet alechu. That's Matan Torah. And what happened in the Elef Harvi? Galut. We have to leave Eretz Yisrael. Eila Masei b'nei Yisrael. They had to travel out. And what happened on the fifth Elef Hamishi is when the Gemara was written. Torah Shabbal Peh. Eila Dvarim, which is Mishnah Torah, right? And then finally the sixth aleph, which is Elef Hashishi, which we're all in right now, is Atem Nitzavim Ayom Kulchem Lefnei Hashem Lekechem. You're standing in front of God, because right now, like the Gemara just said, it's Yemosei Mashiach. So, yeah, just end with Amar Rav Papa, just to finish off, just to close it up. Amar Rav Papa, Itoi Tana v'Loyode Prote Kamahava. If he doesn't know how to count, what? What is he trying to count over here?
How many years he's writing as it did in the documents of that year?
How many years is it from Elef Harvi Yemosei Mashiach? Right? Because we just said you have to count. So Yemosei Mashiach is supposed to start Elef Harvi on the 4,000th year L'Brias Ha'olam. So now we're still going.
According to him.
It's what?
According to this Tana.
According to this Tana,
No,
it's
no,
supposed to.
Tosu says it can happen then. So he says
It
that
could happen
woe to
then.
us every single day we don't have it.
It's what?
Tosu says woe to, I think it's Tosu.
Woe to us that
Woe to us
every
every single
day doesn't-
that we miss it because we
that we
have an
miss it.
opportunity for it. That
Beautiful.
for 2,000 years.
Beautiful. So Rav Papa says if somebody loses track of this minyan, of this count, l'sheilu l'safra kamakosib. You should ask a sofer, what is the date in the shtar according to the Malchus Yav? And again, the sofer is always counting from the Greek, when the Greeks came to power, which is 40 years into Bayis Sheni. V'nitfa alai arba'im v'tamin. And here, the math will work out that if you add 48, right, you change the last 2 digits and you add 48 to whatever their count is, you'll find your pesarin, you'll find the solution, you'll get back on track to whatever that number is since Yemosei Mashiach, since El Ravi. V'simonech arba mishmoine ir. Right, we're talking about the Or Levium. V'itoy safra, and if a sofer makes a mistake, right, he's not sure exactly what to count from Malchus Yav and what the year is, the last 2 digits. Nishayla l'tana kamaktani. Ask a Tana, ask a Jew, right, what his number is from Yemosei Mashiach, from the Elef Raviv, and niftzah menayu arba mishmoine, and deduct 48, and mashkel lechumrei v'simonech safra b'tzira Tana tesva. The simon is the sofer will always deduct 48, the Tana will always add 48 to get to their right numbers. Okay, we'll stop over here.
Zaku Baruch.
You see, who was